Yeah, I'm Alan Noble. I'm actually an electrical and electronics engineer by undergrad, which I topped off with a master's in computer science. Like many of you, I'm from Adelaide's western suburbs. I'm a Brighton High boy who went on to Adelaide University. After graduating from uni, I lived in Japan for several years. I speak Japanese, and I got very, very interested in the problem of how you translate between languages. And I became fascinated in automatic translation, what's now called machine translation. And that took me to California, where I studied artificial intelligence, or AI, at Stanford University. After getting my degree at Stanford, I was thrown out into the wonderful world of Silicon Valley, which is possibly one of the greatest technology innovation hotspots on the planet. My first job, I was working in the area of computer-aided engineering, or CAE, and that's basically designing software to help other engineers do their jobs, like hardware engineers, for example. And then I started my own company. I worked in the area of internet services, then I did another company in the area of networking software. And finally, I started working in the area of ocean technology and ocean conservation. As Kevin mentioned, though, before, I'll talk a lot about AusOcean this morning, but before that I worked for Google for 11 years, Google in Australia, which is based in Sydney. When I joined Google, there were 20 engineers working in Australia. When I left, there were over 650. So that was a big increase in the R&D presence in Australia. These days, however, I'm most passionate about the environment, and in particular, our oceans. So I'll tell you a little about AusOcean's history. So AusOcean was founded in February 2017 with my wife, Susie Myers, who unfortunately passed away from brain cancer earlier this year. We also enlisted as our third founding director, Professor Sean Connell from the University of Adelaide. I was still with Google, working part-time for Google and part-time for AusOcean. Google was really supportive in blessing that arrangement, but the advice I often give entrepreneurs is, if you're going to do something, you have to focus. You really have to make that your priority. And I realized, I couldn't do a part-time non-profit AusOcean and also do my Google job part-time. So, but I didn't quite yet have the courage in my convictions. I wanted to kind of test the waters a bit. So I had this crazy idea to take 3 months off, hire 3 equally crazy interns, and see what we could do in 3 months. And 2 of the 3 interns are here today. There's Kath, marine ecologist, and Saxon, mechanical engineer, and wave your hand, Saxon, come on, there you go. So the intern program worked out really well. What we tried to do that summer was crazily, since this is basically November 2017 through February 2018, what we tried to do was build a prototype for what we have today, which is essentially an ocean monitoring network. There's a lot of bits and pieces goes into making an ocean monitoring network too. You need to have something that can float on the surface for your power needs and your communication, but you also need to be able to design sensors that can actually do interesting things, whether it's record video or monitor temperature. We'll talk more about that. The big thing about that summer with working with the interns was it reaffirmed my belief that technology can and should be a force for good in this world. It shouldn't just be technology for making cool products like a better social media app. Okay, I know we like social media, but there are more serious things we can do with technology. And helping our oceans is a very, very serious thing indeed. So I should explain a little bit about how AusOcean works. We're not a traditional non-profit organization. We are really a technology startup. We basically take a technology-first approach to everything we do. So our mission is to help our oceans through technology. But first, before you do anything, you have to answer the question, why? Why are you doing it? Well, healthy oceans are vital to the future of this planet. If I put it bluntly, if our oceans die, our planet dies. I could go into all the reasons, but that's probably the simplest way to express it. I have a question, and there's going to be a t-shirt to the person who can answer the question. So get ready. And if you're within 1%, I'll say yes. What percentage of the Earth's planet is covered by water?
Over there,
Who was first?
over there, I reckon. Oh, I can't see behind me though.
You were way too quick for me. Calvin, would you pick one? There was someone in here I thought was pretty quick.
Jesse, have a go.
70%?
Correct. 71%, but you get it, you're 1%. So Jesse gets a t-shirt. If it's the wrong size, well done. Yeah, I'm sure you all knew the answer though. Anyway, if you come work with Calvin, there'll be more t-shirts, I'm told, right? So yeah, I mean, the funny thing about that is it's 71% of the Earth's surface area, but there's this thing called the biosphere. The biosphere is the volume in which animals and plants live. If you think about it, most terrestrial life lives within a few meters of the planet's surface, 5, 10 meters. There's very little life more than 10 meters above, the surface. Whereas in the oceans, there's hundreds of meters, in fact, thousands of meters of volume. So if you look at it in terms of biosphere terms, the oceans are actually over 90% of the Earth's biosphere. In other words, the volume in which life can live. So we're working on the oceans because basically they got it wrong when they named this planet Earth. We should be planet Ocean because we're mostly water. But the oceans need our help. There's a lot we don't know about the oceans, and that's the why. The second question you have to ask yourself when you embark on a new endeavor is, well, how are you doing it? So the answer is through collaboration. We believe strongly in collaboration. We collaborate with other non-profit organisations. We collaborate with schools, which is the reason we're here today at PCC. We also collaborate with researchers and universities. We think it's important to work with others to get the best possible outcomes. We have a program called Network Blue, and very proud to say that PCC is part of our Network Blue program. But Network Blue is really about providing a low-cost way for citizens and students to basically access information about the oceans and to share that information with their community, and ultimately, take more of the responsibility, more of the custodianship for our environment into our own hands. Thirdly, what exactly do we do? So I've answered the why, I've answered the how. Well, the what is the technology part. So we design and build and deploy technology for ocean monitoring. And we do this in a way that's quite innovative. We do this through open source, and I'll talk more about that. So we have designed a sea surface platform, which we call the rig. It's actually out. Is it the quadrangle? What do you call that? Yeah. It's out there. You can have a look at it on the way out. It's a cute little platform. When you think of a rig, you probably think of some kind of oil and gas rig out in out in the oceans. Well, this is the tiniest rig you're ever going to see. But it is a rig in the sense that it floats. It provides essentially a platform for doing interesting things on the ocean. Interesting can be whatever you want. Interesting can be measure temperature, measure salinity, collect video information, collect audio information, generate audio information. So really, the realms of possibilities are quite large. It's really up to what our partners want to do. So we provide a platform it's like a Swiss Army and a pocket knife kind of platform for doing all kinds of interesting things. So we've developed this basic technology, and we continue to invest in improving that. Today we have 6 paid staff, which is a mix of employees and contractors and student employees. We've also got some fantastic volunteers as well. Our rigs are currently deployed in 5 locations around South Australia. One of them is out in the Port River, or it was, it will again be in the Port River, right out front. We're also in Windara Reef, which is on the western side of Gulf St. Vincent. We're down at Ogre Point, which is near Masla Beach. We're also down at Carricalinga, a bit further south, and we have one of our rigs floating on the north coast of Kangaroo Island at a place called Smith Bay. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our philosophy, how we go about doing our business. And at the crux of this is a commitment to openness. Now, when we talk about openness, we're really talking about accessibility, making things accessible. And we care about accessibility of 4 things. We care about accessibility of data, or data if you prefer. I lived in the States for 16 years, I have to say data. Data, we care about accessibility of science, we care about accessibility of technology, and we care about accessibility of people. So I'll kind of go through that. First of all, open data. What is that? So open data refers to making scientific and other data openly and freely available to others. If some data is paid for by the taxpayer, like for example the Bureau of Statistics, that data is typically made available to the public, which is a good thing because you taxpayers, or perhaps your parents and your teachers, have paid for that, and that should be open. But unfortunately, a lot of data that organisations collect is not open. It's kind of hoarded and kept to themselves. And if you hoard it and keep it yourselves, you're not really sharing. If you're not sharing, well, you're not getting the best results. So we believe in open data. The second thing we believe in is open science. Because open data is actually not sufficient. Well, let me explain. So when you study science, you learn about the scientific method. And at the heart of the scientific method is repeatability. If someone else can't read your description, your report, your paper, and reproduce the results, that's actually not good science. So you need to be able to reproduce. Others need to be able to reproduce the scientific results. Trouble is, as we move into an increasingly complex world where there's a lot of, it's not just about going out and making a measurement and saying, follow me this recipe and reproduce the results. It's much, much more complex. You need to use software, you need to use tools, and sometimes, a host of quite different things to actually reproduce the data. And so open science is about making all of that accessible, the tools, the methods, the software. And by doing so then, only then can science be truly open and repeated. Next is open technology, which is very, very much at the heart of what we do. In the context of AusOcean, open tech refers to mostly to our software and our hardware. Everything we do, all of our software and all of our hardware is openly and freely available to anyone in the world. We're not in it to make money, we're in it to have an impact. And to have an impact, we want to freely share all of our technology. You might have heard of open source software, some of you. So open source software, if you're not familiar with the term, is the way in which someone who develops software will make it available to others to use with very, very few restrictions. So all of our AusOcean software is open source, and our hardware as well. We also use other people's open source software too. So it's like a community where you kind of, you pay it forward, you make your stuff openly available, and in turn you can use others' contributed software too. The fourth thing I mentioned was openness or accessibility of people, and really this is about collaboration. You guys are pretty young. You've grown up with this thing called the internet or the World Wide Web. You probably can't imagine life without the internet and getting online and, I've got 5 minutes, okay, I'll be on time. Well, when I was a boy, the internet didn't exist, if you can believe it. It's crazy that it's just been the last few decades. But the it's possibly one of the greatest inventions of humankind, in that it's really dramatically facilitated the ability for people to share information around the world and to collaborate with people regardless of time zone, regardless of country, anywhere in the world. Incredibly powerful. So it means if someone's got the right idea, you can find others interested in your idea and sharing your passion and collaborate with them. So today we're very, very focused on collecting data at a few spots here in South Australia, but in the not too distant future we'll be collecting data at other sites around Australia and eventually around the world. And all of that data will be shared and globally accessible to anyone around the world. So it's a really, really big vision, and you are part of that vision. So in conclusion, the biggest problems that we face, that our poor, beleaguered planet Earth face, they're actually not going to be solved by people of my generation. I'm old. They're going to be solved by people of your generation, by you. And they're tough problems, but it's through science and technology, through openness and collaboration that we're going to solve those problems. So I'm encouraging you, keep studying your science and technology, and when you graduate, please go out and solve and tackle some of these big problems. Thank you very much. Do you have time for any questions? I think we've got 4 minutes. Any questions? It's really hard with the lines. Don't be shy, I don't bite. Yeah.
What did you have for dinner last night?
I actually went to a Japanese restaurant called Wasai. It was really good. That was easy. Ocean question? That was a good question, but we've got a rig out in the courtyard there, so yeah, go have a look at that. You can basically familiarise yourself with the working parts. Did I see it?
Jody?
Oh yeah, hi.
How long did the rig take to build?
How long do you think a rig takes to build from start to finish these days?
3 days.
3 days. Yeah, which is pretty quick. So I mean, you do it though over many weeks, right? Yeah.
We did ours right in sort of one workshop day and then stuff finishing off, but
Yeah.
overall it took us a few weeks, but yeah, most of it was done in one day.
That includes, I think.
Well, if we were to do it like 3 people.
Yeah. If you've
a
got
class of students, if it,
That's right. That's us 3 people doing it. If you've got 10 students doing it, you can divide and conquer. And there's the basic rig, but there's also the sensors. For example, building a camera is a very, very common accessory. That takes a bit of time, but it's not too hard. Is there another question?
Sister?
How long have the rigs been in the water for?
Oh, that's a great question. So, well, the first rigs we put in the water way back in January 2018. So that's 2.5 years ago. So they've really proven to be reliable. We've capsized a couple, various incidents. We've had at least one be hit by a boat, possibly more than one. But they've proven to be pretty strong, and they've withstood many storms. So they look very small, and they look like they're not particularly robust, but actually they're very, very robust.
Leah.
Hi.
How does the information get from the rig to everybody else?
Yeah, excellent question. So the rig is networked in one of 2 ways. It can actually be networked to the mobile phone network, Telstra's network, for example. So that's method number 1. And from there it goes up into the cloud. The cloud is essentially where data lives in large data centers. So we communicate over the carrier network. The other way we can do it, which is what we're going to do here at PCC, is Wi-Fi. We can literally set up a Wi-Fi link from the back of the school and aim it at the rig. And that's actually really nice, and it's actually very, very cost effective too, because you're not paying for Wi-Fi. Yeah.
It's been out of the water just recently. What sensors have you got on there?
This one would have a camera on it, an underwater camera, and it's got our basic environmental sensors, so air temperature, water temperature, and humidity. But we can add other sensors if there's interest too. There's been a lot of interest for example, measuring salinity and turbidity, so we're working on those as well. Maybe one last question.
what's the most interesting or surprising bit of data that you've found so far?
It's interesting to see. We often see we get video footage of fish and other marine species that we don't necessarily expect. In places where you wouldn't necessarily expect. So the ocean's an interesting place. I would say, we're collecting more video footage than we're currently able to analyse. That's actually a problem we want to address through technology too, using software to curate and analyse it. But yeah, a lot of the video is really interesting. Thank you very much for having me again. Thanks very much, Charlie.